Hi there. Medicare can be very confusing. When do you apply? What coverage do you take? Who can you trust to make sure that you're getting the right guidance? In this video, I will be interviewing one of Boston's Medicare experts who will help guide us through some of the Medicare basics we all need to be aware of. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Singer. If you're interested in timely and up-to-date information on retirement, Social Security, Medicare, and the like, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notifications bell below to be alerted to when we post new videos. We are here with one of Boston's premier experts on Medicare. We have Scott Mabor from Senior Benefit Boston. How are you, Scott?
I'm well. Thank you very much for having me.
So, Scott, let's go over the very first point, which is when should people enroll in Medicare?
So that, like with everything Medicare, that's not necessarily an easy answer. You are eligible to enroll 3 months before your 65th birthday. So starting 3 months before you turn 65, that is your first enrollment period, your initial enrollment period. And I would strongly encourage everybody who's in that age range or getting close to it to take a look at Medicare so that they understand the system, whether they opt for it or decide ultimately to delay it, at least they understand the system.
So you mentioned 3 months before. I've also heard that if you are going to be getting comprehensive Medicare coverage, not just Part A, if you will, that you might want to even start even before then to take a look at some of the supplemental coverages that are around. Is that advice good advice for the people who are looking at this channel?
Yes. I mean, I think that depending on when your birthday is, you have that 3 month before you turn 65 window, and it will be in effect the month you turn 65. You can also sign up the month of your birthday or 3 months after your birthday. To your point with the supplements and the other comprehensive coverage, I should back up. When I refer to signing up for Medicare, that's Parts A and Part B only.
Right.
That is the signing up for Medicare. Everything beyond that is voluntary. So supplements, the Advantage plans, I shouldn't say drug plans are voluntary, but the drug plans, that would be stuff you also need to look at the same time frame. But you don't want to sign up for Part B, which has a premium. Part A does not, unless you've decided you want to go forward with Medicare. Otherwise, you're going to have potentially an employer premiums on that plan, as well as the premium with Medicare.
So, Scott, is it mandatory to enroll in Medicare?
Yes. So the simple answer is Medicare is the law. If you're over age 65, that is the law. But with all things government, there's an exception to the law. So the exception is if you're still working and covered under your employer's plan, or your spouse is working and you're covered under your spouse's plan, you do not need to sign up for Medicare. The exception to that is if the employer is less than 20 employees, you do need to sign up for Medicare. So you have to be careful. And a lot of people, where a lot of people get trapped too, is with COBRA. COBRA does not count as what is considered credible coverage.
Yep.
So you could be on a COBRA plan and that does not count. And the reason you have to sign up when you're eligible, if you do not have credible coverage, is that there are penalties that can be assessed for not signing up, and the penalties are lifetime penalties.
So, Scott, are there penalties for not enrolling? I mean, how long do they exist? How much are they? Are they really that costly?
Yes. So you obviously want to avoid any penalties because it just will increase the cost of the policies for life. So they are lifetime penalties. It's not an annual penalty. Once it's assessed forever. In the case of Part B, it will be assessed at the rate of 10% per year on a prorated basis for every year you don't have it. In the case of Part D, which is the other penalized one, it is assessed at 1% per month times the national average cost of a Part D drug plan, and that's added to the cost of your drug plan for the rest of your life. So avoiding penalties is a big deal because they are expensive and they add up and they can be there forever.
So it's really important to understand this landscape because as you approach 65, understanding, what you have for current coverage You might say, I don't need it, but if you're, let's say you're self-employed and you don't cover 20 people in that health insurance plan, it could end up being a costly mistake if you don't end up applying or enrolling at the right time.
That's correct. If you make that mistake simply by just an honest mistake, you didn't think you needed it, or you thought your COBRA was satisfying the need, the penalties get expensive. I had a woman who was approaching her 80th birthday and never signed up for a drug plan because she wasn't taking any prescriptions and just didn't think it made sense to sign up for one. But her penalty was assessed at, they take your current age minus your 65th birthday, and there's a little window, times 12% a year, times the $33 a month, which is the federal average for a Part D drug plan. And that was added to her monthly drug plan's cost. So it ended up really quadrupling the price of her monthly drug plan just as a penalty for the rest of her life.
Sometimes you don't even know what you don't know, right?
Exactly. And you can get into trouble by not knowing.
Right. So Scott, what if I do still work? I mean, retirement now has, different definitions. I'm continuing to work full-time, part-time. What am I covered under? I may not be retiring in the traditional sense, so talk to me.
Because retirement has changed and people are self-employed or 1099 employees, I consider Medicare a privilege. So you've achieved a certain age, you've paid taxes in this country, you're entitled to Medicare. And while many people try to avoid it for as long as possible, I think that's a mistake. I think it's really can be excellent coverage, in many cases less expensive and more comprehensive than what you get from an employer's plan. And that's especially true in your example, if someone's self-employed, they're working for a small company, the option to have Medicare instead of an employer's plan is something you've earned and something you should look into. And it doesn't matter what size company you work for. If it's a small company, you may be mandated to be on Medicare. That's less than 20. But you could be in a large company, but maybe there's a large deductible on the plan, or maybe the plan's quite expensive. It's well worth looking at Medicare because, again, if you're working full-time, you can still be on Medicare at no additional, well, depending on income, no additional cost. And it may prove a better option and give you more flexibility than being on your employer's plan.
So Scott, I think it's really important. I mean, there's one, seems to be big takeaway here is that for those who are watching, just mark on your calendar 3 months in advance of your 65th birthday, period.
It's important. It's your right. You should understand it to avoid penalties. You don't have to be intimidated. It can be something that you learn about and you can decide yay or nay depending on your circumstances, but you need that information to make an informed decision, and that's where it's really critical.
So Scott, how does Medicare coverage relate to the employer-based plan? How do you get a sense of checks and balances and pluses and minuses of the two different comprehensive types of plans?
So it's a different system, and usually I run through what I call Medicare 101 with people just to show lays out all the options. So A and B is Medicare, that is the government's program. And then most people either have the supplement on one side, supplement and a drug plan, which works differently than most employer plans. The supplement typically in Massachusetts, that's what I'm talking about, you're paying a flat monthly fee but not having any deductibles and any co-pays, which is different than what most people are accustomed to. And then of course you need a drug plan. On the Advantage side, that's going to be much like the HMOs and PPOs we have from work, but the advantage there is typically much lower premiums than an employer-based plan and much lower deductibles. And then of course you have a network with co-pays. So it's partly dependent on somebody's health, partly dependent on their budget, partly dependent on their preference.
So Scott, there's just an awful lot of information out there and we're all getting bombarded with mailings and TV ads, et cetera, et cetera. So, we've never done this before. We've never reached this age before. Tell us, who do we go to? Why at this point is it important to have somebody to guide us through all of this information?
Well, I like to think I add value and I don't cost anything. So I think in terms of, you can get this information online. And I liken it to doing your taxes. You can do them yourself. You can buy a program to do it. You can go to a volunteer. You could go to a tax preparer, or you could go to a CPA, and that's kind of the hierarchy of doing your taxes. This is much the same. You can sit there and do all the research you want. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a Medicare and You book, you may be familiar with it, that a lot of it doesn't apply in Massachusetts. But you don't know that because they send that book to everybody in the country who's turning 65.
Yep.
So you end up spending a lot of time reading a book for information that doesn't apply.
Scott, there's an awful lot to consider when it comes to Medicare. And to be honest with you, it's not very different than, many of the Social Security questions that we help our clients with. I mean, there's 567 different strategies when it comes to Social Security. And if any of you are interested in learning more about how to avoid some of the costly mistakes with regards to your Social Security choices that could cost you tens of thousands of dollars throughout your retirement, we have a master class that goes into some of the most costly mistakes you could possibly make. At the end of this, if you want, you can click on Become My Client, and there is a full-blown masterclass going over 4 of the most costly mistakes and how to avoid them. And if you're interested in moving forward on finding out how to navigate the Medicare landscape, Scott, can you give us your contact information?
Sure. I'm on Facebook, Senior Benefits Boston. And if you like that page, I post a fair number of Medicare articles from other sources. My telephone number is 617-721-1250 is my direct line. You can call me anytime. My website is seniorbenefitsboston.org. And those are probably the 3 easiest ways, or scott@sbboston.org.
I really appreciate your being on. And if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and send it to your friends. I really enjoyed speaking with you, Scott, and thank you all for watching. And we truly hope that you enjoy the retirement journey.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.